Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is time once again for Blitz Boys here on the Jackwagon Sports Network. Slade and I are here to break down a wild Week 13 we had in college football. We have the coaching carousel in full swing right now, so we'll be sure to talk about all of that. The newest college football playoff rankings are out. We'll talk about all that. And we're heading into conference championship weekend, the most important weekend of the year. And there's a lot of exciting matchups this week, so we'll be sure to get you guys ready for all of that as we head into this weekend. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode of Blitz Boys. All right, starting off this week's show, we're going to look at the coaching carousel. We've had a lot of interesting moves over there, some moves that didn't happen. So let's look at the coaches that have found their new homes as of right now. Jonathan Smith has left Oregon State. He is going to be the new head coach at Michigan State. We're definitely going to talk about that here in a minute. Texas A&M, they had a lot of drama, but Mike Elko is the new head coach. He officially signed his contract. He didn't get kicked off the tarmac. Mississippi State is going to go with Jeff Lebby. He is the offense coordinator from Oklahoma. And San Diego State hired Sean Lewis. He was the offense coordinator at Colorado this season. Some new openings in the world of college football. We have Houston. They have fired Dana Holgorsen after 5 seasons. Indiana finally moves on from Tom Allen. I said it before. That win over Penn State in the 2020 season is the only reason he's kept his job this long. But they go through this buyout. He is out of there. UTEP fired Dana Dimmel. I don't really understand that one. And then we also had Middle Tennessee State fire their coach. That one is probably the most mind-boggling to me because that was definitely a coach I feel like didn't deserve to get fired. I understand, he wasn't winning the conference titles and not quite getting them to that point. But if you look at the record the past couple of years, he wasn't, losing the teams that he was supposed to beat in a sense. Like, yeah, he had a couple close in-conference losses, but that's the point of being in your conferences. It's supposed to be hard fought all the way through. I feel like he beat some pretty good teams and he lost to some pretty good teams. He upset Miami on the road last year, and then this year they played Missouri, who they almost beat on the road, and then they played Alabama on the road, who they got. Like, what did you expect to happen against Alabama, kind of thing? So that's when I think Middle Tennessee State is going to be a lot like North Texas was this year. They fired their head coach last year because they weren't getting to that pinnacle they wanted to reach. He went out, he lost the conference title last year. They fire him, they bring in a new head coach, and they had an abysmal season this year. I think Middle Tennessee State's going to be looking at a very similar situation next year. But let's go and let's talk about the two big hires that happened over the weekend. We'll start with probably the most dramatic. I know this is the one you wanted to talk about a lot. I don't know if any of this has been 100% confirmed, but I'm
Right.
It's pretty true. We feel like in the eyes of the college football world, this is pretty true. So allegedly after the Commonwealth Cup on Saturday, when Kentucky upsets Louisville on the road, the team heads back to Lexington. Mark Stoops hops on a plane and he flies to Texas A&M to go sign his contract there. While he's in the air, the boosters get wind of this and they decide they don't want Mark Stoops to be their head coach. They
The
basically
fans
throw a revolt.
also.
Yeah, boosters.
He,
Yeah,
he was
everybody.
trending on Twitter that he was going to be the alleged hire, and so Texas A&M fans went ballistic on Twitter. I think that they thought that if they hired him, that was going to be the last $160 million check they ever saw.
Yeah. So anyway, he's in the air. The revolt starts happening with the boosters and all the fans. As the plane lands, the Texas A&M athletic director allegedly meets him on the tarmac, tells him the deal's off, this isn't happening. So he gets back on the plane, flies back to Kentucky, tweets out later that night saying, my name was brought up with a lot of rumors. I love it here at Kentucky. I'm not leaving. I'm happy where I'm at. Okay, sure, whatever. And then the next day it comes out that Texas A&M is heavily pursuing Mike Elko. The Texas A&M athletic director flies to the Raleigh-Durham area, picks up Mike Elko, and then they fly to Texas A&M together. Elko lands. They have this huge big ceremony. They welcome him, and he is now going to be their head coach. just a weird situation to look around. I don't expect anything less out of Texas A&M,
Mm.
though. I don't hate the hire. Mike Elko is a pretty good coach. I mean, it was a disappointing season in his eyes, but I understand they dealt with a lot of injuries and things happened that he couldn't control there. Um, but I just want to address the Texas A&M fans for a second before I let you go. Who the hell are you to say Mark Stoops isn't going to be a good head coach for you? If you look at what he's done in Kentucky, he's taken a program that is severely underfunded. He has to beg and plead the Kentucky athletic department to give them even a fraction of what they're throwing at their basketball team, and he has turned them into a consistent 9-3, sometimes a 10-win team. He is brought them from the basement of the SEC. They used to be in the same breath as Vanderbilt, and now they are up here, and we're talking about Kentucky year in and year out as a possible dark horse for the SEC East, or a team that's definitely going to make a bowl game. Maybe they can upset a good team here or there. Who are you as a fan base that just went through all this shit with Jimbo Fisher, who took over a prestigious program? Yeah, he won a national title, but other than that, kind of was eh. And then he comes over to Texas A&M with this huge buyout after he's already kinda on the downward turn. Who are you to sit here and say that you don't want a head coach like Mark Stoops? And again, I'm not saying Mike Elko is a bad hire, but if this is really true, if Mark Stoops was on that plane flying to, Texas A&M and, he lands and the revolt happens and he ends up getting back. I hope to God Texas A&M has a 3-win season for the next 20 years. If this is a 100% true story, which I feel like it is, because this sounds like something Texas A&M would do. But that's just my rant on this. I want your thoughts on the whole situation, and of course the new hire, Mike Elko.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that, like you said, Stoops has had to fight for a lot of funding. I think that he is a good fit for Kentucky. I don't think that he would have been a great fit for Texas A&M in what they're looking to do. I think that they hired a really great recruiter in Jimbo Fisher. He comes in, he is stuck in his old ways. He's still calling the plays, doesn't have an offensive coordinator. They finally get him to put someone else in charge of calling the offensive plays. That's still not really working. And they're underachieving from what they expected when they signed him to the 190 or $100 million, whatever the heck it was at that time,
Mhm.
Uh, there was also reports with the Jimbo Fish that he was like so fixated on the recruiting process that he was like contacting the people that do like the recruiting statistics to see like what differentiates someone from a 5-star or a 4. I don't know. Like there's just so much off the field worrying about instead of on the field. And
Mhm.
I don't think that I really don't think that Stoops would have been an improvement from Jimbo Fisher. I think that he would have been a good hire and that he would have won games, brought in good guys, but I don't think that he would have been a step up to the next level that they need from Jimbo Fisher. I think that Elko has the possibility. Also, this could possibly be a 2-for-1 because they could get Riley Leonard in the transfer portal. Texas A&M has the money. You heard Matt Rule say, I think it was today or yesterday or something. Right now, a decent quarterback is going for 1 million, and it goes up to 1.5 million, 2 million to get someone just to jump into the portal.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that they could realistically try and do with Riley Leonard. Get him to go down there. He would have a healthy Riley Leonard next season. Like you said, this season might look like a disappointment for Elko, but I mean, he went through 3 quarterbacks in this season. I mean, he did pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that he did the best that he could there with the situation that he was given. And I mean, I don't know. It's just so much. There was so much going on. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting ready to walk into work. This is all happening. And to be honest, when I saw the information, the tweets and stuff going out about Stoops being told on the tarmac, like, "Hey, no, it's not happening. You're gonna have to fly back." Um, I thought the next update we were gonna get is Ryan Day is the new coach of Texas A&M. I honestly
Yeah.
that would have been the person if I had to like if they're like we're going after someone bigger
Yeah.
and it was going to be this big dramatic like stop on the tarmac. Now, obviously, this is alleged. We don't know if this is true, but if
Yeah.
that's actually true, that's immediately where my brain went. This dude has lost 3 games or 4 games in the last 3 years as head coach, 3 of which have been to Michigan, and these people hate him. All of a sudden, he just goes and takes a massive contract to Texas A&M and says, "You know what? You didn't." you didn't think I was good enough. Well, you didn't deserve me. You had what you
Yeah.
had, So that's where I thought that was going. A little disappointed to see that it's Mike Elko, but I think Elko will be a step up from Jimbo Fisher. So I think that they got what they wanted, um, in that respect.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other big, shakeup over the weekend is Jonathan Smith leaving Oregon State for the brighter future at Michigan State. Um, I was a little surprised. I know his name had popped up in the last week or so, and then he started giving interviews where he's basically like, my agent's talking to people. So I'm like, normally you hear a head coach like, no, like, or at least bluff that he's not going to leave, and he was straight up like, yeah, my agent's fielding offers right now. I'm like, okay.
I think it's
Um,
fair with the way the Pac-12
yeah,
has
and again,
dismantled this year.
I get it in that aspect, but the fact that this man is a former player, he graduated from
Hmm.
Oregon State. This is his town. Like,
Yeah,
and this was one of those coaches where it's like, oh, he's going to be there, for the foreseeable future. He has great job security because he's winning at Oregon State, um, and doing a really great job with that program. It was surprising to me in that respect. But if you look at it, like you said, obviously with a brighter future, a lot of uncertainty around Oregon State and the future of the Pac-12 or the Pac-2, however we're looking at it right now. There's the constant rumors of the Mountain West agreement and all this other stuff going on. So I get in that aspect of why you leave and you take the bigger contract and so on. Um, what I found very surprising is it had come out that he told the team on Thursday. He told the team on Thursday before they played their biggest game of the year, respectively. They're going down the road to play your in-state rival. There's a lot on the line, and I was kind of wondering watching that game Friday night. I was like, Oregon State doesn't look like themselves, and it wasn't like an injury. It was just like you could tell this was a team that had just played Washington the week before, and that's kind of at first what I chalked it up to is they put it all on the line against Washington. It was their last kind of gas to get into the Pac-12 championship and win it in that final season. Um, and I was like, maybe they just spent it and they kind of realized, well, everything in front of us, but still playing your rival. I was like, this is a little weird. And then it came out that he told the team the day before the game that he's leaving. I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, maybe some players started to figure it out, but still, regardless, the fact that he just straight up told the team before a huge game like that, like, I'm leaving. This is my last game with you guys. Like, I thought that was just mind-boggling, so stupid to me. Like, so I mean, I feel horrible for the Oregon State players. Obviously, that the whole team is getting ready to go through a monumental shift, and a lot of uncertainty in the future. And to get kind of stabbed in the back like this by your head coach again, right before your huge rivalry game with a lot on the line, still, I felt like to kind of just be betrayed like that and straight up told like, yeah, I'm leaving after this game. Like, bye guys. What are your thoughts on that?
I see your viewpoint on this. Obviously, we were hanging out, so we weren't really paying attention to what was happening online. But they look back at it. I mean, this news came out 2 hours before the biggest game of the season for them, like you had said.
Yeah.
2 hours before the game starts, it's coming out. Reports John Smith is going to Michigan State, and so I don't know what we were doing at that. But I think we were shooting baskets outside with Mason. I don't know, but um, it just I think that he is looking at this from a business perspective. At the beginning of the season, I think that he wanted Oregon State to go to the Big Ten. He wanted them to work it as a package deal with Oregon, that they went together. It didn't work out. He says, you know what, I'm going to the Big Ten anyway, with or without you.
Or
I
even
think
just
he,
have, like, a set future, like, have
right,
an actual plan rather than, "Well, we hope to kinda join the Mountain West
correct.
Conference," but yeah.
I think he told them Thursday because he views it as a business opportunity. He wants these kids to understand that they can trust him. He made the decision. They found out right away. They didn't find out from the reporters. They found out from him right away. And I think that he hopes, while in the moment probably wasn't the best decision to tell the team day before, right before this big game, still implications that they could have made the Pac-12 a lot of different things, if a couple different things, or not Pac-12, they could have really screwed Oregon
Yeah.
if they win that game. So there's that, but I think that he says this in hopes that he can get some guys to flip and come to Michigan State. I think that that's his long goal with this. Is that he got the stability in the job. He knows exactly where that team's playing, who they're playing, and what their conference is going to look like next year. And he hopes by being completely open with the players that he can get some of them to jump ship and come over and play at Michigan State. I think for
Yeah.
Michigan State, this is also a huge hire because they get someone that they don't really have to pay a ton of money. He's a good coach. And I mean, they're still paying somebody that's not coaching right now.
Mhm.
So this is a good way for them to kind of, not have to break the bank again while still being able to they could be competitive with him as their coach at Michigan State. So
Yeah.
I think that it was a good hire both ways, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the one interesting thing I'm taking from this, and again, it'll be curious to see who he brings over from Oregon State. But the amount of players from Michigan State that have already jumped in the transfer portal,
Mm-hmm.
3 quarterbacks have left. The first, second, third string quarterbacks are all leaving. So I kind of wonder what that conversation was like with the head coach as he's leaving, or entering, I guess I should say. If it was like a Deion Sanders situation where it's like I'm bringing my own luggage, you guys can fight for your spots, but pretty much I don't see Jonathan Smith as that kind of coach. But I also kind of wonder if they saw the writing on the wall where there's a better teams head coaches coming in. He's probably bringing some players. I'm probably going to get pushed down the pecking order. Let me get out while I can. So it'll definitely be interesting to watch that situation as it unfolds. But I agree. It's a better job for him. I just, in the grand scheme of things, I don't agree with telling the players before they. I don't think again, business decision. It's one thing if you agree to terms or whatever before the game. I think personally you can call Michigan State up if you're talking to them on the phone and be like, I will sign this contract. Let me finish my regular season first. Let me get these kids through the regular season, and then we can announce this together Saturday. And there's no way that contract was going anywhere. Is kind of what I'm getting at here. Is I think Michigan State found their guy. He obviously wanted to go to Michigan State. Like, hey, let me finish this game. Let me get through our rival. Let me try and knock them out of the Pac-12 championship. Let me ruin their season for the second year in a row. Go out on a high note. Let me tell my kids first, and then I'll fly there Saturday morning. We'll have this big press conference, and we'll announce it from there. And that's
Yeah,
kind of what
but
upsets me with some of these, especially if you look back at the Brian Kelly situation. We talked about that 2 years ago when that happened. I don't agree with the way some of these coaches are leaving, especially when they have their job locked down. Like I said, Michigan State wasn't going to go out and get anybody else. Like they both agreed, hey, this is going to be our job. This is fine. Let's let's wait till Saturday to sign this deal. Let's not do anything 2 hours before the football game, or I'm going to know a day ahead. Let me not tell my players that before we go play a huge rivalry game. That's where I take, I guess, the most issue with this. Is
well,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. So what happens then in that theory if Oregon State goes out and plays a super close game against Oregon or they beat them? I mean, then you're fucked if you're Michigan State if you didn't get him to sign the deal beforehand.
I don't think
Because
you are.
he's not leaving Oregon State if he beats Oregon on Friday.
I think he is,
If
regardless.
really,
Yeah,
you think
one
if
hundred
he if
percent.
he knocks Oregon out, the best team in the Pac-12 as of right now, before this game is played this Friday, right
Well,
now
over
Oregon is the best team in the Pac-12. So if he beats the best team in the Pac-12, you think that he is just going to still jump ship?
he jumped ship before the game. I think he was out of there before the game even happened.
No. I'm
So I
saying
don't think
I
he's
I
changed.
thought you were saying that he's not even going to sign anything till Saturday. He jumped ship before the game. They weren't winning the game before
Yeah,
when he signed that contract. They were never
yeah,
going to win the game when he signed that contract before the game.
I mean, I mean,
I mean, it
but
looks horrible for him to go and win that game and then go to Michigan State and then have a full on they video him and his kids and his wife getting off a plane the next morning in Michigan.
no, I am no. What I'm trying to say is, I mean, again, him and Michigan State had already agreed. I'm saying like him and Michigan State are talking on the phone mostly all week. I'm just saying when Thursday they should have been, rather than, hey, let's sign this now, is let me finish this final game with the kids. I am agreeing verbally to this contract. Let me finish this game with the kids. Let me get my team through this final week, especially with how big of a game it is. And I'm not saying the outcome would have changed. I'm just saying don't let me add a distraction to these players. I want to keep them focused on this. When the game is over Friday night, I will fly to East Lansing. I can sign the contract Friday night. We can do it Saturday morning, whatever. I'm just saying, they could have waited until after the game to kind of do a lot of this stuff, especially telling the kids again before the game is where I take the biggest issue with this. And I think he should have been. I don't. What I'm saying is, I don't think Michigan State, if he would have told them Thursday morning, is like, hey, let me just get through these next 2 days. I agreed to your contract. I will fly there Friday night after the game. But let me just I don't want to add a distraction. And I don't think if they hung up the phone, Michigan State would have picked up and called somebody else and said, "If you can get here before Friday night, we'll give you the deal first." That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is they had agreed to it; it was set in stone. Essentially, he just had to put his name on the dotted line. They could have waited to do a lot of the announcements and stuff until after the game, and kept another distraction off of these kids. Is what I'm getting at, and not necessarily that it would have changed anything in the game. Oh, but I think it definitely added another level of, well, why the fuck am I playing this game? And like my coach is giving up on me, kind of deal. And as somebody who's been around a coach that was on his way out the door, and you could tell it's hard to want to play for him and go out there and do my best, regardless of, yeah, I get it's a rivalry game and you want to beat your in-state rival, but a lot of these, like, no disrespect, DJ Uyunglele transferred in from Clemson. He wasn't an Oregon State lifer, and stuff like that. But some of those kids on the team are. A lot of those kids weren't. They transferred in because they wanted to take this Pac-12 team, win the final Pac-12 title, win a national championship at Oregon State, and it just didn't happen this year. And at that point, a lot of those kids are like, "Why the fuck am I playing this game?" Kind of deal. So that's why I think he should have waited until after the game. I don't think that contract was going anywhere. I don't think it was a first come first serve kind of deal. So that's what I was getting at more so than don't tell them because you can win the game. I mean, who knows what happens, but I think it just added kind of another level.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. Let's look at Week 13 as a whole. We had so many interesting games. We'll start with the Iron Bowl. Alabama wins 27-24 on I think it was 10 seconds left. They had a 4th and goal from the 31-yard line. They're now selling short shirts that say 4th and 31. It wasn't 4th and 31, but whatever. Do whatever you want, Alabama. So they keep their playoff hopes alive. I don't know if you got to watch any of that game. It was right around your bedtime. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it kept me up. It kept me up for an extra hour. It's mind-boggling how calm Nick Saban was. His quarterback just stepped over the line of scrimmage, gives them the penalty that sets them back to the 31-yard line. I mean, this dude was 4 or 5 yards over the line of scrimmage when he throws the ball. And he's standing there, his playoff hopes down the drain, SEC championship. Like, how are we even going to have a chance to beat Georgia if we can't beat Auburn, He's just standing there like this, just watching. And, I mean, Auburn rushes 2 guys. What the hell is wrong with you, first off? You played the entire game. Alabama was playing very good first start of the game. Then all of a sudden, they put a QB spy on Jalen Milroe. They kind of play it very good the rest of the game doing that. And then all of a sudden, the last play of the game, they decide, or last, winning play of the game, they decide that they're going to just rush 2 guys. Craziness. Also, the fact that I had Alabama to score over 30 points, they intercepted the ball and scored. They didn't. He stepped out of bounds. But it would have been crazy if he scored. I just think that what a game. I mean, this was my game of the week, and we'll get to that stuff. But I also think that people need to calm down in saying that Alabama sucks because this was such a close game, because they're very short-sighted because Georgia had the same very close game against Auburn at Auburn. Same exact situation happened. So not the same exact, not the 4th and 31, but a very close game. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, back to that final play by Auburn. I genuinely don't think they would have called that QB. I don't think the defense coordinator said, "Let's run a QB spy here," because if he is, you should not be coaching college football, because it's 4th and goal, and again, it's 31 yards. Even if he gets past if he decides to tuck it and run and he gets past those 3 guys, you have 8 other guys between him and the goal line to stop him, and he has no option but to run it now. And so I don't see them calling the QB spy. I think that it was literally the defensive tackle was just like, I'm just gonna chill here. Um, and then if you look at the defensive backs, I don't
What are they
understand how
doing? There are
you
8
put
guys, and only one is within 5
yeah,
yards of
I don't understand how you put
Isaiah
one guy
Vaughn.
in yeah, and one guy on one-on-one coverage with one of the best wide receivers on Alabama. Um, but back to what you were saying with Nick Saban, and I mean that just shows you how good of a coach he is because so many times we see Nick Saban flipping out. And, and I'm not going to say he's never done it in the fourth quarter or anything like that, but he understands the difference between high pressure and low pressure situations. Where if it's low pressure, like I remember, I think it was Middle Tennessee State or some random school
Mhm.
a couple years ago, when he and Lane Kiffin were screaming at each other on the sideline, or excuse me, he was screaming at Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin just kind of stood there. Um, but they were up like 50 some points, and that's when he understands that I can push these guys. I demand perfection here, so that way when we get to these high pressure situations, yeah, they're still going to make mistakes. But screaming at this kid right now isn't going to do anything. It's more likely to make him go out there and make a huge mistake that's going to ultimately cost us the game. And so I that's why I understand a lot of people don't like Nick Saban and I don't like Alabama. Like I'll be straight up. I'm not a fan of Alabama, but I really respect Nick Saban. He is one of the best coaches of all time for reasons like this. And you can't help but kind of tip your hat to him. And that's what coaches like me and stuff who are so new to this and still trying to develop their game and their repertoire and how to handle themselves in situations. That's what we want to get to is when something goes wrong on 3rd and 15, and now all of a sudden we're going to be at 4th and 31 is it's not going to help anything to get in this kid's face and scream or scream at my offense coordinator or whoever. It doesn't help the situation. Take a deep breath. I mean, he got a little upset. He was like, "What are we doing?" kind of thing. But again, it's not like the classic Nick Saban rants that we've seen in the past. And that's what makes him so good. And like you said, it's not time. Alabama has had some close games this year, and I'm not saying you can't point at that, but like you said, Georgia struggled with Auburn as well. And this isn't like a cakewalk for Georgia this weekend. Kirby Smart's 1-4 against Nick Saban at all time. And right, as much as we looked at Bama at the beginning of the season, like, wow, this team, it's not the Bama of old. Here they are, they still have one loss, and we talked about it earlier this year. It's like I'm not going to panic for Alabama until they're losing like 4 games a season, and here they're one loss, they still have a chance at the playoff and everything in front of them. So that I really enjoy Nick Saban as a head coach. I wish he was coaching Oregon. Obviously, that'll never happen, but um, yeah. Uh, Let's move on to the game between Michigan and Ohio State. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Ryan Day loses his third straight 30-24 victory for Michigan. I sweated this game so hard on Saturday. So wait, sorry, back to Alabama. So um, on this was Saturday too. Saturday we did our Thanksgiving with my dad,
Mhm.
hanging out with Evan, and decided Evan and I were just going to put bets in together. So the afternoon, the 3:30 games, we put a parlay in. And we thought we had the Alabama money line. We thought that was the biggest cakewalk of the four we had. I think we had Liberty to cover, somebody else to cover, and another money line, and everything else cash. And all of a sudden we're sitting here looking like Auburn's going to win this game. Like we're screwed. Like damn. And then that play hits, and Evan and I looked at each other. And it's like, on one hand, I kind of wanted Alabama to lose. That way, it's if Oregon does win this weekend, it's one less kind of argument or hurdle for
Mhm.
them to clear. Um, but on the other hand, I really wanted to win money, so I wasn't complaining there. But looking to the Michigan game, I put a parlay in for that game. I had Michigan winning the first quarter. I needed Michigan to win the first half. I needed the over to hit in the Michigan money line, and I put $1. It was going to win. It was only going to win like $6, but I don't do big bets. But still, winning $6 is big to me. Like if
Mhm.
I'm going to go positive here, and they won the first quarter. I think it was the spread was 0.5, so they just need to win the first quarter. So I think they won 3-0, 6-3, or something like that. Um, then it's getting ready to go to halftime, and Ohio State starts driving. If they kick the field goal, um, the spread was 3.5, plus 3 or 2.5, something like that for the first half. And all of a sudden, Ohio State's driving. I think if they kick the field goal, they're either going to tie it or they're only going to be down by like one. So the bet's not going to hit. And I'm in the kitchen pacing, and everybody's looking at me like, "What is wrong with you? Like, you're not a Michigan fan. Why does this matter to you?" And I was like, "I really need them to miss this field goal." And I am just like freaking out. They call the timeout. And I'm like, "Oh my god, like I can't breathe." And my brother Laramie looks at me. He's like, "What is going on?" I was like, "He's like, how much money are you gonna win?" I was like, $5. He's like, "Seriously?" I was like, "This is a big deal to me." I was like, my DraftKings account at one point was like at $1, and now here I am at like $15. Like I'm happy. And then they pushed the field goal wide right, and I was so relieved. But still, nonetheless, it was a great game. It was a classic, like we thought it was going to be. I'll let you give your thoughts on this, and Ryan Day as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kyle McCord was the difference here. We talked about the big three quarterbacks in the Big Ten this season, and being Drew Alar, Kyle McCord, and uh, McCarthy. And I think that, I mean, it was crazy. We get to see them all play. McCord basically plays perfect against Penn State as best he could,
Mhm.
and that gets the win there. And then against Michigan, I mean, I don't know how, when you're playing with your best receiver, I mean, I can see you over, under, throwing behind, throwing in front of some of the other guys you're not throwing too often. But when you literally have targeted this dude more times than other offenses have targeted their entire receiving group in a
Mhm.
season, I mean, I don't see how you're missing your leading receiver by 5 yards on these passes. He is just missing Marvin Harrison just everywhere. And they end up picking him off. And was it the first or second quarter? I think it was the first quarter, or no, second quarter, I think. Uh, and I mean, I think that this game was lost by McCord. I think that the pressure got to him. The two interceptions definitely proves to be the difference in this game. I mean, he throws an interception, Michigan goes down and scores with it. You see them, Ohio State getting the momentum back the entire game. They get close there at the very end, and then all of a sudden, here you go. What is it? I think it was like 60 seconds left or something like that for them to drive down the
Yeah,
field.
a little over. Yeah.
Throw, throws another pick while throwing to Marvin Harrison. Like, I just don't understand, of all the guys you could be throwing to, how you're missing that dude's hands.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of what we talked about when with Georgia and
Mm-hmm.
Carson Beck. I think Kyle McCord has definitely had his struggles this year. I don't think he's a level of quarterback Ohio State has had in the past. He's not a C.J. Stroud. He's not a Dwayne Haskins. He's not a quarterback. Justin Fields. He's not on that level. But what we were talking about with Georgia is Carson Beck relied so heavily on Brock Bowers. And then when Brock Bowers went down, he was forced to kind of look elsewhere, and that really helped open up that offense. Kyle McCord never lost Marvin Harrison Jr. this season, and he was his safety blanket. You could see it on Saturday. And Marvin Harrison, granted, he had for only having 5 catches, I felt like he still had a pretty impactful day.
Very good game,
Um,
yeah.
but you could tell that as soon as he had to kind of look elsewhere and throw elsewhere, is when he really started to struggle. And there was times where he forced that ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. was covered. The first interception, the slant, I believe it was a pick six.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was I can't really put that on him as much. I don't think it's really anybody's. That's just the play design. It's supposed to be snap, catch, throw, and you know, great play by the Michigan defender. I guess they read, they had the signs on that play or whatever. I saw Ohio State fans complaining about it, saying, "Well, Michigan was loading the box on, and they knew we were running the ball." I was like, "It's you were running like obvious." It was a James Franklin effect. You were running in obvious situations, and you nonetheless. Anyway, um,
One thing I
but
do want
I
to
mean,
say
yeah, go ahead.
is, like you said, he looked like he was panicked when he had to throw the ball to someone else.
Mhm.
And then he was forcing it to Harrison. I think I said it early in the game. In the first quarter, he had 6 passes. He was like 1 for 5 to start the game. All the passes were to Marvin Harrison.
Yeah,
Um, I don't understand, and this isn't a Kyle McCord, that this is the offensive coordinator, the QB coach. Like, at what point do you tell a dude, hey, they're making this easier for you somewhere else on the field? They're double covering your best receiver, and you're having a hard time throwing it to him. How about we look at one of the other options, because somebody is bound to be open. I mean, or has
yeah,
a better chance at catching the ball, not the dude that has two dudes that he's carrying down the field. Like, I would have thought when he was like 1 for 6 to start the game, and I texted you guys that like he's going to have to throw the ball to someone else other than Harrison if he wants to
Yeah.
win this game. That
Yep.
somebody on that sidelines would have said something, but they didn't. They just continue. I mean, he ended the game like 15 to 37. All of the drops to or all of the incomplete passes seemed like were to Marvin Harrison. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just crazy.
Yeah. But and I think that the odd thing is everybody's looking. We're going to talk about the rankings here in a little bit, but everybody's looking at the rankings, and Ohio State only falls to 6. It's, well, the resume's so good, and the big debate coming out of this week's rankings was everybody's talking about, well, do we want the 4 deserving teams or the 4 best teams in the playoffs? And everybody keeps throwing Ohio State's name. Ohio State has a shitty resume for as good as it is. Like, and everybody points, well, they've 2 really good ranked wins. Notre Dame is not that good. We've seen that. Anytime they play difficult competition, they completely fall apart and they suck. And that's why they have 3 or 4 losses right now. Their other big win is over Penn State. And I mean, no disrespect to Penn State, but they are not the 10th best team in the country. I mean, the playoff rankings outside of the top 8 just make absolutely no sense to me. Tennessee is still ranked. Kansas State's still ranked after getting embarrassed at home. What?
They're the reason, and I agree, they're not the 10th best team in the nation, Penn State. The reason they're ranked 10th and the reason why they always finish in the top 15 is because their 2 losses are to the 2nd and 6th or
Right.
2nd and 5th, whatever it is, ranked teams in the nation. That's the reason that they end at the 10 to 15 range every year, because they schedule against the rest of the Big Ten, Indiana, whoever else they're playing,
Mhm.
and then they play the 2 big games, and that determines whether they get blown out by one of them, determines whether they're somewhere close to 10 or close to 15.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if we talked about this on the show, but I think we talked about this in person later on Friday. Is I think Big Ten defenses are extremely, extremely overvalued. Everybody talks about how good Big Ten defenses are, and Iowa's offense sucks, but their defense is one of the best in the country. Because look at who they're playing. Like, if we back all the way up, if we look at when Penn State and Iowa played, Penn State won 42-0, 49-0, and their offense looked horrible that night. But they just dismantled Iowa's defense. But still, we're talking about Iowa's defense is one of the best in the country. And the same thing is going to happen this weekend against Michigan. But then as soon as they play good outside competition, like again, if we look at the Notre Dame Ohio State game, Ohio State's defense played very well in that game. I'll give them that. But if we look at, especially if we focus in on Michigan and we look at their defense every year, oh, this is one of the best defenses in the country. They go to the playoff semifinals, and whether you want to talk about sign stealing or not, their defense gets obliterated every year in the playoffs because it's such a huge difference from playing a shitty Big Ten offense to going and playing one of the best offenses in the country. And Ohio State's the same way, except they usually have the offense to match it as well. But these defenses go and they play these competent offenses and they just get dismantled. I think back to 2021 when Oregon went on the road, they played at Ohio State. Ohio State, again, was talked about all season as having one of the best offenses in the country. And Oregon just fucking shredded them.
I was on vacation when this happened.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's where I think a lot of these teams get overvalued is, wow, their defense is so good. But when they play competent offenses, they're getting shredded. And we're not talking about that enough. And I think that's been a point raised by some other people the past couple of weeks. I still don't think it's getting enough attention, though.
I
And
think
I'm
they're
not
all
saying
Pac-12 aficionados. No, I'm kidding.
no. But I mean, I feel like if you took a Big Ten defense and you threw it with a Pac-12 offense, you might have one of the best teams in the country. But again, at the same time, like I'm saying, is those Big Ten defenses show a lot of issues when they play good offenses, like we've seen in the playoff or bowl games and so on. Moving on, we're going to talk about. We already talked about a lot about the Civil War. We had the Apple Cup. Washington narrowly escaped Washington State. This was a great game. The one thing I want to talk about here is I am concerned for Michael Penix Jr. And I'm not trying to say this with glee or anything with Oregon playing them this weekend. I am genuinely concerned. He has really struggled ever since that Oregon game, and I say he struggled, and he still looks really good. He definitely does not look like himself, though. Those first 6 weeks, he looked like a completely different quarterback to what he does now. There's a lot of questions about him kind of being hunched over on the sidelines after he didn't watch the kick or anything, and that was one thing. But you literally had a bodyguard standing there, kind of protecting his body, making sure when the field got stormed, nobody touched him or anything. There's been rumors that he's been sick for the past couple weeks. This is the longest flu I've ever seen. If that is the case, um, I am just really I hope he's 100% healthy for this weekend. But with how long this has lingered, I'm becoming curious. But nonetheless, Washington holds on 24-21 win. Your thoughts on that game?
I think Washington did what Washington did the last 6 weeks. It's like, I mean, you just basically put it into words. I mean, he played amazing leading up to the Oregon game. He played amazing in the Oregon game. He still has glimpses of amazingness where he goes for 3 or 4 touchdowns in a game, but their offense as a whole, and I don't think this is all on Penix. I think their offense as
No.
a whole has been lackluster. Their defense has been what has carried them through this entire season since and in the Oregon game. I mean, they held Bo Nix to what was it, 2 touchdowns in that game, and so I mean, and I'll talk about Bo Nix later. I mean, I don't think that he's been great against decent defenses this year. He goes out and throws 6 touchdowns against these random Joe Schmo teams, and then all of a sudden he plays Washington or Oregon State, and he can only throw 2 touchdowns, and he only has like 12 to 15 completion. It's just, I don't know if the defenses are different against these two, or if they're calling different offenses against certain teams. I don't know what has happened, but I feel like, yeah, I don't think Penix has played great, but he has a chance to right all the wrongs this weekend. We
Yeah.
could say he lost the Heisman race. He lost it. We thought that he wasn't even going to be in the Pac-12 championship game for a couple of weeks now. And then 2 weeks ago, I guess they lock it up, because of their record and being able to escape all these narrow games. And he has a chance to really just flip the script and go out there and beat Oregon again this weekend and just be like, well, I didn't have to play great. We're in the college football championship and whatever.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like you said, we'll talk about Bo next then. But yeah, this is going to be a really exciting game on Friday. We'll preview that here in a little bit. Then we had the Governor's Cup between Kentucky and Louisville. Kentucky pulls off a huge upset, or a huge comeback. That was a fantastic fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching that on the score updates on my phone as we were watching the Michigan game. But Louisville officially eliminated from college football playoff contention. Now they can do the same thing to their ACC counterpart against Florida State this weekend. Georgia and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech gave Georgia a hell of a run for their money in the first half. I thought that might be a serious upset alert. Second half, Georgia showed up and took care of business. Sunshine Showdown, we had Florida State and Florida. This was Florida's game to lose, and they went out and they found a way to lose it.
They had a chance to be up 20-3 end of first quarter, or 20-7 end of first quarter.
Yeah,
they missed 2 field goals in that first quarter. They were up 15-3, or I think it was 15-3. I think they had the opportunity to be up 20-3 to end the first quarter, but they missed 2 field goals.
Yeah. I mean, I tweeted this out on Saturday, and it'll never not amaze me how boneheaded Florida players can be. I mean, we look back at 2020; they had a chance to make the playoffs. They had a really good team. They go to LSU. They have the stupid shoe throwing penalty. LSU gets a second chance. They go down. They kick the field goal. They beat Florida. This week, they have Florida State stopped. They're going to force a punt. They're going to get the ball back with a chance to go win the game. And I can't believe both players didn't get called for targeting. They both deserve to get called. Doesn't happen, but at least one player does. Extends the drive. Florida State continues to go down the field. The quarterback comes in after being what I thought was dead. He laid there on the field for a solid 2 minutes. I was like, he's not getting up. Like, he's not coming back in. All of a sudden, look up 3 plays later, and he's jogging in like, I'm good, coach. I'm like, what is wrong with you? But huge one for Florida State. They keep their chances alive. We're going to talk about their chances at the playoff here in a little bit. And then we had the Commonwealth Cup between Virginia Tech and Virginia. Virginia Tech just smokes Virginia. We thought this was going to be a close game. With how well Virginia played. Virginia Tech heard all the noise, and they came out and they just took it to Virginia for 4 quarters. One thing I did find interesting from this game, I don't know if you saw, so Virginia Tech, they win, they celebrate, they go in the locker room, they celebrate. They're like, hey, let's go get a team photo out on the field. They go out to take the photo, and as they're taking the pictures, the team, or Virginia, turns the sprinklers on the field. I thought that was really funny.
Very funny.
Staying in the ACC, NC State 39-20 victory over UNC. It wasn't even that close. NC State just straight up dominated UNC. I watched the middle of the first quarter to halftime, and UNC turned the ball over like 3 times. NC State got the ball on their side of the
It
50.
was 33-7 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So, I mean, you and I both picked NC State, so we were happy with that outcome. And we weren't really surprised by that either. Oklahoma State was one of the more surprising. I mean, we knew BYU would come out and fight to make their bowl game. And then we were actually talking about this Friday night and talking about, who Texas is going to play. And I told you, and I was like, this is the kind of situation Oklahoma State chokes. Like that they just need to win. They need to beat a lesser opponent and punch their ticket to go to the Big 10 or Big 12 championship. And at one point they were down pretty big. And I texted you and I was like, I told you this is what happens every single fucking year. Somehow they find a way to hold on and win double overtime. But before we talk about some more stuff, I'll get your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were down like 21-6 or 26-6. I don't know what it was. I mean, they were down by 3 scores at one point, and they were able to come back. I mean, this will be crazy if Oklahoma State 24-6. This will be crazy if Oklahoma State is able to beat OU in the last bedlam for the foreseeable future, and beat Texas. The 2 teams that are leading for the SEC because they claim that football's better over there and they don't want to be in Big 12 anymore. And Oklahoma State has a chance to go out there and send them both out the door on a loss. I mean, it's just it could be crazy. Could be crazy.
It definitely can be. We're looking forward to that game because if Texas wins, I got to get my first. So I want to propose an amendment. So I will still get the tattoo. I'm not trying to back out of the tattoo. But if by some stroke of luck, if Oregon wins the national title, can I at least get a tattoo for that first, and then I'll get my Texas tattoo?
Sure.
Now, obviously, it doesn't happen. I'll get the Texas tattoo first, but I don't want to.
I think I'll do you one better. I think if Oregon wins the national championship this year, you don't have to get the tattoo at all.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
They might not even make the playoff.
Yeah, they might not. Yeah, yeah. This might take care of itself. But
I mean, both teams could lose this weekend. It could be.
Yeah, and then I'd be safe.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. We'll have to keep looking at that and talking about that. But with all those results we had this past week, it caused a lot of shakeup to the college football playoff rankings. Let's go ahead and look at the updated ones. So the big news is Ohio State dropping from 2 to 6. Looking around, Louisville fell all the way to 14th. Tennessee still stays at 21. Oregon State only fell to 20th, and Kansas State falls to 25th. Let's look at the Ohio State fall first. Do you think they fell too far? Did they not fall far enough? Just right? What were your thoughts on that?
I think this is the playoff committee doing what they do best and kind of setting it up so that they get to make their game time decision with whatever happens this weekend.
Yeah,
it's set up perfectly that if the 3 teams in the top win their games, Florida State and Oregon lose, Ohio State has the chance to, or I think they need 4, 5, and 7 to lose. For them to get in. I just think it sets up more possibility for there to be pandemonium, Realistically, I think that while they only have 1 loss, they're not fighting for a conference championship. So I do think that they should be behind Alabama and Texas. But, I mean, I think that this is just the college football committee doing this, this sets up the chance for them to get in because that's what they need to do.
Yeah. And I had said this last night when this was, put out. I'm with the resumes. I'm not disagreeing with Ohio State falling from 2nd to 6th. It's a very good loss. They lost to. They were the number 2. They lost to the number 3 team by 6 points. They beat 2 other ranked teams. One of them 17. One of them 10. So on that basis, I understand dropping from 2 to 6. I think that's fine. But like you said, I think it's completely unfair this year to leave a 1-loss conference champion out and put a 1-loss non-conference champion in. And so for that reason, I would have put Ohio State at 8 and moved Alabama and Texas up another spot. Because again, if craziness happens in front of them, yeah, there's absolutely still a path for them to get back in. They're not eliminated by any stretch of the imagination. But if it comes down to, let's say, a one loss, let's say Texas, Alabama, and Oregon all win, the fact that we're still going to be including Ohio State in that conversation, I don't think is right
Mhm.
because I don't think a one loss non conference champion deserves to be in over a one loss conference champion. Um, and that's just my thought. Looking at everything,
Could you imagine that one?
yeah.
Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Oregon as the playoff four.
That would be. I mean, even if let's say a dream scenario happens here where Georgia, Michigan, and we get Oregon and Texas.
Mhm.
I think that would be the greatest. Even if we get Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Texas, or
Mhm.
any whoever wins the Pac-12, I think that's going to be one of the best playoffs we've had,
Yeah.
and I think ever. If we look at the first one, Florida State kind of limped their way in, and everybody was talking about Ohio State kind of not really or getting the glass slipper at the last second with their third string quarterback. Florida State looked abysmal all season, but they won the
Mhm.
ACC. They were defending national titles or champions, so we put them in. And then Oregon, beat down on them in the Rose Bowl, and then they go in to play Ohio State, who beat down on them in the national championship game. Um, but I think we're set up for probably one of the best college football playoffs. I couldn't think of the word. I couldn't think of the word playoffs after I just said playoff. Um, I think we're set up for one of the best that we've ever seen. So we'll go back. We'll talk about it for a minute. Florida State, if they win, do they deserve to get in your eyes? Let's say Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State win. Does Florida State deserve to stay in?
So wait, what was it? The top four teams win.
Yeah, top 14 wins.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you
we'll say
can't take
Texas too.
you can't take a conference champion and undefeated team out. I think that they're definitely in if they win against Louisville this weekend, whether it's in double overtime or they break the overtime record, or if they win by 30. I mean, I don't think it matters how Louisville plays against them this weekend. I think that if they win that game, they're in. I think that if you go into the conversation like people are trying to say, you're looking for the four best teams. Look, we could also say that this would be the best year to do the 12-team playoff because it would. Look at the top
Mhm.
12 teams. I mean, this would be really fun to see, Of the previous years, this is probably the most competitive that you can see from 4 to 12. Those teams could realistically flip wins and losses once when played against one another.
Mhm.
Uh I think that it while I don't want to watch Florida State play in the college football playoff because I don't think that I think that they're going to get blown out by any of the three teams that they would be matched up against. I think it would be unfair to let them out because of one player. While that one player has showed that he was the heart and soul and the catalyst to that entire offense,
Yeah.
I don't think that you can ruin the rest of the kids' season if they win this weekend.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about. I made a TikTok last night when the rankings came out. If you want to make a debate on resume and say, well, especially say, let's say Texas wins. Well, Texas has a better strength of record and strength of schedule and all this other stuff, and their one loss is to the number 12 team in the country. It was a rivalry game, neutral site. Whatever excuses you want to make, if you want to compare resume to resume and tell me Texas is better and put Texas in, I'm okay with that. But if the second that the argument becomes, well, we kept Florida State out, or Florida State doesn't deserve to go because Jordan Travis got hurt, your argument's nullified because that's not how this is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you want to tell me that Florida State has a horrible resume, they don't deserve to be there for that reason, I will listen to that. We can debate that as much as we want. But the second that that argument becomes, well, Jordan Travis is hurt, therefore this team does not deserve to go. That's where I have an issue with that, and I've seen a lot of people talking about that. That's you can't tell me this team's gonna lose until they lose. If they go out and lose Louisville this weekend, I think obviously that solves a shit ton of problems.
Right.
But
I think that
until
there's
they lose, you
more
can't say,
people.
well, they will lose without their star quarterback.
I think there's more people rooting for the fail or the fall of Florida State this weekend than there was rooting for the fall of Michigan last weekend.
Yeah. So we'll have to see what that outcome is. Real quick before we talk about some picks from this past weekend, we'll look at our cash out records. You and I both go 2-0. What a weekend for both of us. You hit your upset alert.
Mhm.
They won the game outright. Mine covered the spread, so we had a good weekend all around, the two of us.
Mhm.
Nick went 1-1, so I have a possibility to get back to 500, which is that's
Mhm.
all I want. So if I go 1-0-1 this weekend, I'll take it. Pick'em standings, you are just clearly pulling away. I can't make up any difference this week with the conference championship game. So looks like unless Nick pulls out a miracle and beats you, you at least have me covered. So great weekend for you there. Let's go ahead and let's get your picks real quick. What was your best game? We had a ton of great games. I think you already alluded to yours, but your best game of week 13.
Yeah, I mean, the best game was the one that deprived me of sleep, and that was Alabama at Auburn. I mean, it was on the 10th year anniversary of the kick six. I mean, it lived up to all the hype, and I mean, I think it would have been disappointing had Alabama gone out there and won by 10 points or something like that. I think that it was what needed to happen on that day, and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it helped that I was invested into that game for monetary reasons.
Mm-hmm.
My pick, I'm gonna go with the Governor's Cup between Kentucky and Louisville. Just the explosion of points in the fourth quarter, especially late that they had there. And then obviously everything that happened afterwards in the drama that unfolded. A team essentially getting eliminated from college football playoff contention because of that. That's why I'm gonna put that I put it up there on the same level with the Iron Bowl. Who is your biggest surprise and your biggest disappointment of Week 13?
Both kind of surprising for their reasons. My biggest surprise, Clemson. I mean, they beat South Carolina 16-7 without an offensive point. They kicked 2 field goals, had a defensive fumble return, and yeah, I just think that what a crazy way. I mean, Clemson, has this big turnaround 3-4 weeks ago, and
Mhm.
buy the stock, and then their offense can't score a point this week against their in-state rival. It's just crazy. Uh, Disappointment. I think it goes to Oklahoma. They put up 69 points this weekend, and it was all for nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
you lost the last Bedlam, and that's what it happened. That's where it was. You could have lost that last Bedlam, but the fact that you lost to Kansas, I mean, they they had a 3-game skid after they beat Texas, and it is because they treat it like a Super Bowl. It should have just been a rivalry win. You smoke your cigars, you do whatever you need to do, and the next day you're back at it. They almost lose to UCF the next week,
Mhm.
or did they have the week off? Was it a bye week and then they went to UCF? I forget. But
It was a bye week and then a UCF at
yeah,
home.
so they have UCF 29-31,
Mhm.
super close game. Then they lose to Kansas 38-33, and then lose to Oklahoma State 27-24. I mean, they went on a 3-week bender there, and I think that that's where this was the disappointment for them was right after the Texas game and whatever they did for the next 3 weeks, because they should not have lost. They should not have lost all three of these, or they shouldn't have had these three close games. I should say they shouldn't have been close against UCF. Shouldn't have been close against Kansas, and they shouldn't have lost and only been able to score 24 points against Oklahoma State.
Yeah. My most surprising team, I'm gonna go with Iowa State. Just completely impressive how they played on offense in a complete snowball. I thought the under was gonna hit in that game. I think I might have taken it, but I can't remember. It was snowing, and I was like, yeah, these two teams are just gonna run the ball and kill the clock. Well, they ran the ball, but they ran for like 80-yard touchdowns multiple times. Iowa State gets a huge, kind of last laugh road victory, 42-35. Most disappointing, I was kinda having a hard time picking one. I'm gonna go with Oklahoma State just because of how poor they played in that game against BYU with everything on the line for them. Again, down 24-6. Great that you were able to make that comeback and win the game, but you should have never been in that situation, and now, instead of getting a rematch between Oklahoma and Texas, we gotta watch Oklahoma State, Texas, which is gonna be a far less interesting game in my eyes. Let's move on. Let's make our picks for this upcoming Friday. We have two championship games on Friday night. First up, we have New Mexico State and Liberty, a rematch. This is for the Conference USA title. This will be 7 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Nick is going to go with Liberty. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Liberty here too. I think Salter is just a better quarterback. I think that the offense is going to be much different than what New Mexico State is expecting. And I think that they're able to cover the spread in this game, which I think is at 10.5 or 11 points now.
11 right now, according to ESPN Bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to go with Liberty here as well. I think this is a much improved New Mexico State team from when they played the first time. But again, as great of a story as it is to see New Mexico State sitting here at 10-3, and the rise that they've had under Jerry Kill, I think Liberty is just too dominant this year. They have so much in front of them because if Tulane loses this weekend, I think they're in the driver's seat to make a New Year's Six bowl game. So I think Liberty is going to go out and take care of business. The other championship game we have is the Pac-12 championship. We've talked a lot about this already. Number 5 Oregon versus number 3 Washington in Las Vegas, 8 o'clock on ABC. Nick is taking the Ducks. Nick or Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Washington in this game. I think that I don't think it's going to be a clean cut thing for the college football playoff committee, but I see it not being clean cut for them in the Florida State or even the possibility of Iowa's defense somehow surprising Michigan. And I mean, that game ending in like a 4-2 score or something and the under hitting once again. I mean, the fact that game is very interesting. I can't wait to talk about that on Saturday, that their over under is a half a point for
the team total.
For their team total, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going with Washington this game. I think they're going to finally turn it around. I think Penix is going to be able to go out and score 4 touchdowns, and their defense. I think that their defense is improved from when Oregon faced them the first time. I think their defense or their offense is much much worse. But I hope that they're able to turn that around this weekend. And get me another point against you, Nick.
Yeah. So of course I'm going to take Oregon here.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 9.5 point spread is a little disrespectful, especially considering Washington won the first matchup. I can understand making it like 6 at most, maybe 7, make it a touchdown spread, but 9.5, and I was like, damn, that is disrespectful. But here's my message to Oregon and to Duck fans. First, I'm going to address the Duck fans, and that's shut the fuck up until the game's over. So many people have been talking shit all week, and ever since this game happened in October. It was, we'll see you again in the Pac-12 title and just talking shit. And I get part of it is just, this is your rival. You're going to talk shit, and I get that. But there's some Duck fans on Twitter already celebrating and, acting like, well, hey, we're going to the college football playoff, all this other shit. We need to beat these guys. First and foremost, Dan Lanning has not beaten Washington yet. Bo Nix has not beaten Washington yet. Very close, and everybody likes to look at compared records and compared who they played so far this season. Well, Oregon beat this team by this much, and Washington's only beat. That shit doesn't matter until we go beat this fucking team. So until we go to Vegas, and I pray to God that we take care of business, because my mental health cannot fucking handle another loss to Washington. But if Washington wins, they deserve it because they are still a very good team. I have immense respect for Washington. Obviously, they beat us the past 2 times now, and Oregon needs to find ways to win close games, and Washington has been a thorn in our side and prevented us from doing so. So my message to Duck fans alone is shut the fuck up until the game's over. Stop acting like we won. Stop acting like we're the Pac-12 champs and we're going to the playoffs. Shit's not going to happen until the game is over, until we go out there and actually do it. To the Ducks, to the 0 Oregon Duck players that will see this, just fucking win. That's all I'm asking you to do. Just go out there and play like you played. You played better than Washington in the first game. You were the better team, and Washington found a way to win. Go out there, be the better team, and find your way to win. Take it. Don't be the better team. Put their ass in the ground. Go win the fucking game and bring home the Pac-12 title. Then worry about going to the playoffs and going on from there. Just fucking win. That's all I'm asking out of you guys. You guys are the better team. You are one of the best teams in college football. The reason that you're ranked 5 and you're a 1-loss team is because of how good you fucking are. And everybody else realizes it. But don't let the hype, don't let the outside talk get to you. Don't let your head fucking swell. Go win the football game. Play your best game of football you played so far this season. And fucking bring home the Pac-12 title. That's all I'm asking.
One thing I want to say, and it's one of the 2 reasons that I'm picking Washington in this game. One, like you had mentioned, 9.5 points is disrespectful.
Yeah.
The second one, I don't see Dan Lanning changing. I don't see him changing. I think that he's going to go out there trying to put a nail in the coffin, and he is not going to learn from his mistakes in
So,
kicking a fucking field goal, because
well,
that's what
here's the
lost them
fucking
the game.
thing.
Oregon's offense didn't lose them the game. Oregon's
No, I know.
defense didn't lose them the game. Dan Lanning lost them the game. Had he go out,
But
had he gone out there and missed the damn field goal, it's a different story. But the fact that they didn't even let him attempt the damn field goal at the beginning, that's the problem.
well, here's the fucking thing, Slade, is we haven't been able to kick a field goal since then. I don't know if you noticed, but Camden
I
Lewis
know.
has missed like half of his fucking field goals since that point, and half of them have been like chip shots. And I'm like, he missed, I think, his first one on Friday night, and I immediately went, dude, like, you gotta be fucking kidding me right now. And I was like, if it comes down to a kick this weekend, I am turning the game off. I'm congratulating Washington immediately, and I'm just gonna go cry in a corner because there's no fucking way. Um, but that's my little pep talk to Oregon. I don't know if you can really call that a pep talk, but um, it's going to be a rough night for me Friday night, regardless. Just because I'm going to be Oregon Washington games are never easy. Like it's always just like a fucking. I'm just going to sweat profusely for 4 or 5 hours, and if it goes to overtime, God help me. But that'll do it for this week's episode of Blitz Boys. Hope you guys join us Saturday morning, 9 a.m. We'll be previewing the rest of the conference championship games. We'll learn how I'm feeling that morning based off of what happens Friday night. So we hope you guys are there to see that and me just maybe have a mental breakdown, maybe pop in champagne. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But we'll have a lot of exciting things to talk about on Saturday. So make sure you join us there. And then Sunday morning, Nick and I, or maybe just me, I haven't gotten Nick's permission yet. It might just be me. We'll be live as they unveil the college football playoff top four and who's going to the playoffs. So make sure you join us live on Sunday. That'll wrap up this week's episode. As always, thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate your support, and we will see you guys in the next video.